Well, good evening, everybody. You folks, Skip, you and Austin, and you didn't want to sit closer, or was it? At least move up one table here. We're small and folksy here. So we're resuming a recess hearing of the Waterford Board of Civil Authority to hear the appellants at Great River Hydro on issues dealing with the Moore Dam, parcel number 962. Thanks, Mike, for that.
692, pardon me?
692?
692.
Yep.
Sorry, okay.
Well, if I misspoke, sorry. Because this is a recess session, everybody but Brandon, Jocelyn, Skip, and Austin. Are you going to speak? No, okay. So I just need to give you the oath. Under the pains and penalties of perjury, do you solemnly swear that the evidence you give in the cause under consideration shall be the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
And for my attendance purposes, Jocelyn.
Brandon, can you?
Oh yeah, let's introduce everybody. I'm David Morrison. I picked the short straw, so the chairman escaped, so we'll stumble through this together. This is Suki Watson, Select Board member. Ron Gray, Select Board member. The Honorable Masha Martell, Select Board member and a JP. Oh, I'm a JP.
BCA member.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Deb Benoit is our clerk. Mike Keach is our attending lister. So this is Brandon and Jocelyn.
Skip
And
San Souci, I'm your appraiser.
Could
Yeah,
we
I
have
got permission
your
to call
last
in
name?
Skip.
San Souci.
Yeah, but Jocelyn, what's your last name?
Barrett.
Barrett, just for,
B-A-R-R-E-T-T?
Yep.
So Brandon, are you both with Great River?
Great River Hydro.
Okay.
Yeah.
okay,
I'll give the clerk
and then,
Sorry.
let's just say, Susie, just, I need first and last names, just for the,
Austin San Souci,
Okay.
A-U-S-T-I-N. Skip San Souci. And
Andrea Curtis.
You okay, Mike?
Yep.
Okay. We just need to be sure that, did Deb give you folks a copy of this thing I'm working off, or,
No, I didn't.
any of you interested? You can come up and peek over my shoulder. This is just a format set out by the Vermont League of Cities and Towns, just to try to keep us on the straight and narrow here. Are any members of the board have a conflict of interest, or have any of us had what they call ex-party communications with any of the presenters?
No.
Okay. Thank you. So I'll ask Mike to introduce this issue under appeal by Great River Hydro.
Okay, the property under appeal, as stated, is property ID 692. It consists of Moore Dam and 42 acres as part of the same parcel number. I don't think I need to do anything else.
Okay, thank you, Mike. I guess this is where Brandon and Jocelyn get to do their thing.
Great. Well, first of all, thank you very much for the flexibility from the meeting on Monday. We really appreciate your willingness to continue it. And sorry to drag everybody out on a Friday evening to this, but thank you. We had a family emergency that needed to be addressed, so I appreciate the flexibility here. And as Mike knows, we've been having conversations with the Waterford listers now for quite some time. We have had a long-term agreement that was in place, a settlement agreement that was in place on the value of the property. And we've been talking the last couple of years, looking to, potentially extend that, and that really remains our key interest. So, you know, in terms of filing the grievance and filing our appeal here, it's as much about preserving our rights as it is anything to ensure that we have all the rights we have. But really our interest is securing another long-term agreement with the town. We'd really much rather have a negotiated outcome that resolves it for us and provides an agreement, again, that sort of sets the assessment for a number of years, so that we have certainty, so the town has certainty around what that is, and we're not spending a whole lot of time arguing about things, because that doesn't solve it for anybody. So know that we're coming here not in an adversarial position. We're just doing this because we need to preserve our rights so that we can continue those conversations, and that's really our objective. So as you know, we filed a grievance. I think you've got a copy of a letter that we had submitted that has a bunch of information in it. And that grievance was denied at the listers. And in that denial, it resulted actually in another $2 million increase in the value that we had originally grieved. So we're coming to you with a new value that is different than the one we were originally assessed at. And just felt like it was important to flag that out. But that's basically a 10% increase over what our prior valuation was previously under the last agreement. And what I just thought it'd be helpful to have a quick discussion here, and I did provide some handouts here. It's just an understanding, because I think it's often confused by folks in terms of what the status of how energy markets are and valuation of other properties that folks are typically kind of aware of from a residential standpoint. So the first is about residential. Most people say, well, my house value keeps going up. My house value keeps going up. So doesn't the value of your energy property continue to go up? Every time I open my electricity bill is getting higher and higher and higher. So doesn't the energy property go up? So first thing I wanted to show was in this, the first page there is a recent report that was done, that was published on Vermont Digger about residential prices in Vermont. As you all know, residential prices have sort of skyrocketed in a number of years, and the second page there kind of shows you an upward trend, right? It shows you a pretty steady increase from 2008 through 2023, so like the last 15 years. And you can see that blue dashed line is the trend line, shows you how it's trending upward. And so I think that's the framework that most people have when they think about valuation of any property in town. And we're an energy generator. We're kind of a unicorn compared to most things that folks see on a regular basis. So I just wanted to point this out. Because the next couple of slides or pages there show again a recent update that ISO New England provided to the State of Vermont System Planning Committee. Shows energy prices over that same time period, wholesale energy prices. And that's an important thing to point out, because we're a wholesale energy generator. And so we sell our electricity on a wholesale market, not at a retail market. So when we as consumers, electricity consumers, open our electricity bill, we're opening our retail electricity bill. And there's a lot of things in that electricity bill that have nothing to do with the wholesale cost of energy. And unfortunately, all those increases that you and I are paying on our electricity bills are not funneling down to Great River Hydro. So when you look at the wholesale energy prices, you see two things. Is number one, you see a lot of year-to-year variability in the things that make up the wholesale energy costs. And then if you look at the next page, what I did is I made it look, I used the same sort of graph to show that those same numbers. And again, that blue dashed line that shows the trend. And you'll see, instead of the trend being really upward, it's really pretty darn flat. So over the last 15 years, very little has changed in terms of our ability to generate revenues. Our revenues really haven't changed a whole heck of a lot. Now, when you think about how energy properties like ours are appraised, and this is, I'm sure, exactly how Mr. Sansucci appraised our properties. They look at a discounted cash flow in terms of how, you know, they look at an income approach. And if revenues are reasonably flat and expenses have been going up like everybody else, expenses have been going up for us as well, is something's got to give. And so that means our total, you know, EBITDA, our earnings before income, taxes, and depreciation is declining over time as a result of increasing costs and relatively flat energy markets. And so overall valuation in that case, it's antithetical that it would go up by 10%, you know, in a single valuation, given that these conditions are present. So I think it's just important to point those things out in terms of setting the stage. I'll actually hand it over to Jocelyn here to kind of go through a couple of points that we made in our letter. But we did find a couple of discrepancies that are meaningful in terms of the appraisal, that, you know, if we can get those adjusted, we'll be in the ballpark and be ready to resolve this issue. So I'll leave it to Jocelyn to talk through a couple of those items.
So I looked at Mr. Sansucci's discounted cash flow and his overall approach. And as you may be aware, we installed a new unit at the Moore Station last year. And that unit provides incremental generation. Historically, we've passed the minimum flows that are required on the river through one of the larger units. We've since installed a smaller unit, so we are becoming more efficient. We're not using a larger unit to pass this low flow of water. So we only gained an incremental amount of generation, which I provided an attachment in this letter that we provided to FERC, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, that shows how we got an increase in generation. Mr. Sansucci just added the anticipated generation of this unit to our historical generation, which is inaccurate. We are not getting the full, you know, it's not a net generation, it's just an incremental by about 18%.
18,000 megawatt hours or 6.61%. Correct. 6.61%.
Thank you.
Additionally, hydroelectric facilities have to be relicensed every 40 years by the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. In 2042, Moore, Comerford, and McIndoes, the 15 Miles Fall project, will be up for relicensing, and as part of that, we have to do studies and a whole list of requirements for FERC in order to gain this relicensing. The relicensing process begins about 5 years prior to the expiration of the current license. And in Mr. Sansucci's discounted cash flow, there is no consideration for those costs, which are very high cost. Currently, we are relicensing another group of projects, and we're about 10, 12 years into it. It was only supposed to be a 5 to 7 year process. It's been dragged on. So we are still paying those costs to date.
And the initial, it should be pointed out in those relicensing efforts, is the initial cost for the $12 to $15 million range just to do the studies associated with the relicensing. So, and that's, you know, those are dollars that were spent in 2012. So if you put those in today's cost.
Additionally, in Mr. Sansucci's discounted cash flow, we thought that the capital expenditures were understated, and we provided Mr. Sansucci with an unredacted version of this handout, but I have redacted it for the board just due to confidentiality. But as you can see, each line is a project that we have to do and the cost associated with it for the next few years. so we provided Mr. Sansucci with these updated capital expenditure forecasts to show what our true capital expenditures are in the coming years and how much of an impact that's going to have on our revenues. Lastly, the discounted rate that Mr. Sansucci used was 6% prior to adding the tax rate, and once you add the tax rate, it's about 7.9%. And as you know, our parent company changed last year, and we provided Mr. Sansucci with a purchase price allocation. And in that purchase price allocation, there was a discount rate that was used, and it was 6.56%. And that is for a portfolio of projects, 13 hydroelectric projects, 3 storage-only reservoirs. And for Mr. Sansucci's discounted cash flow, we believe that the discount rate should have been higher due to Moore Dam being a single asset and the asset having more risk than a 13 hydro dams that were outlined in the purchase price allocation.
The reason is there, in that case, is that you have with a portfolio of assets, a company that comes in and buys a portfolio of assets, they have a certain amount of ability to sort of balance off costs and take certain synergies that are available there at a corporate level. But at a plant-by-plant basis, you don't have that ability to do that. So whereas, we might have some variability in our generation, for instance, for all 13 stations across 2 different watersheds in vastly different parts of New England, any one station might have a really dry year and be really subjected to this. You can think about actually a couple of years ago, we had a situation where up here we had a severe drought, a really severe drought, and we were actually flooding down on the Deerfield River. So we had a lot of generation down there, but we had very little generation up here. And so, but if you have to look at it on a plant-by-plant basis, that level of variability creates risk on a plant-by-plant, on an individual basis, and therefore a higher discount rate is justifiable.
And last, Mr. Sansucci included production tax credits using the generation that is derived from our new unit. The production tax credits would be possible, but Great River Hydro is not an income tax paying entity. Therefore, these production tax credits are not available to us. They're available to our parent company, and our parent company can monetize them, but at the Great River Hydro level, they're of no use to us. Therefore, we can't use them. So we don't necessarily believe that they should be included in the discounted cash flow.
So when we factor in those discrepancies, and looking at that analysis, it comes up to about a 25% difference in valuation compared to what we do. When we just adjust those numbers, those handful of numbers, minor adjustments, ends up with a 25% change in valuation. So that's why we felt compelled to file the grievance and then the appeal here to the BCA. Does anybody have any questions?
Well, we'll get to that.
Okay, good.
For some reason, we give Skip and Austin a turn, and then we get to questions.
Okay, perfect.
So let's go with all I have to work with here. So, Skip and Austin, your turn.
All right, I'm gonna speak. I'm gonna work backwards very quickly on something that was said that, it's fresh in your mind, and that's the production tax credits. They put a new unit in down there, the Wolfville unit. And the federal government provides the company or the person who buys the unit and puts it in for renewable energy, a tax credit on the amount of generation, and it's part of the incentives to make it happen. And what I heard Jocelyn say was that it shouldn't be considered in the value of Moore Dam, because Moore Dam is owned by Great River Hydro, which is a not-for-profit entity. So they can't take it, but the parent company somebody's gonna use a tax credit. Now, in the world of valuation, in the world of the IRS and these types of things, in the world of valuation from a municipal's perspective, you don't not value an asset. In this instance, the production tax credits are cash that's being produced, part of the revenue. You get an additional amount of money per kilowatt generated from that small unit by taking it off your income taxes. And if you are a tax exempt organization, let's say you, the town of Waterford, put a little hydro in, you get a production tax credit, you'd call up a broker and they would sell that credit for you to somebody who could use it, a taxable person or entity. They would finance the equity to get it and give it to you. So we expect the company, this is obviously the largest hydroelectric owner in North America through Hydro-Quebec. We would expect that they have the acumen to monetize, to make money from that production tax credit. Now, the company they bought was a taxable company. However they wanted to put it together as non-taxable is their business. You're not valuing business, you're valuing asset. That asset has the right to a tax credit. Therefore, that tax credit becomes an asset that you value, the cash flow from that tax credit. Some 40 years ago, when I'm dating myself, that fight was heard. It was a non-tangible asset. In the courts in New England, the various states, and this was for the hydroelectric plants, the very first tax credit in 1979. And they said, no, it's cash flow to the plant, it's not an intangible asset, it's part of the revenue stream, valuable, period. So this goes back a long way. So on that particular issue, we disagree with the company, and we would recommend that you do not consider that a negative. Austin, did you pass out?
I passed all 3 exhibits out.
Okay. The second thing Mr. Kibbe said is that we value this on income. We value this on, we look at the cost approach for you, we also look at the income approach for you, and we also look at the market sales approach. The Moore Dam is the largest conventional hydroelectric plant in New England, if not the Northeast. It is the most valuable plant, conventional plant in New England. It is also the largest plant in the portfolio of plants purchased by Hydro-Quebec, and then followed up by Comerford, and the next biggest one was Wilder. But McIndoe's is part of it, and it's under one license. So you can't sell and break up today more off the license of 3. That type of breakup isn't worth the effort or the energy to do it. The license itself is 3 plants, and if this were to sell, it would sell as part of 3 plants. Those 3 plants represent more than half the portfolio that they purchased. The risk profile of one plant, that discussion about this is only one plant, it has a higher risk, is a red herring, it's immaterial. It's the largest plant. If it was single, it would sell as a single, and it would be the most valuable plant in New England. If it were the part of the 3, as you can see, it is and was the most valuable plant in New England. Now, Austin, would you, everybody get the blue bar graph you gave me?
It's San Souci Exhibit B.
You got one?
Yes.
Okay. This is your market sales table in your report for this year for this plant that they are grading. Okay, so this is the table of sales of hydroelectric plants from 2003 on the left, all the way up to 2023 on the right, 21 years. Okay, so we have been valuing sales, we have been using sales for a very long time to value your plants, just like you do your houses. You do a cost, if you have a commercial property, you do an income, and you do a sale. And you look at all 3 methods of value. So we look at the sales. Now, in this instance, this tall bar on the far right is the sale of the Great River Hydro portfolio to Hydro-Quebec, $2,250,000,000. And and that includes your Waterford. And if you look at it, it's the highest sale in the history of sales in northeastern United States since 2003. And it is upward, it's $1.60, almost $1.60 a kilowatt generated. Now you have to keep in mind that this plant has a capability, that's an authorized capability from the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission and the EPA that is different than most other plants. It is a peaking plant. It was built as a peaking plant, and it is still allowed to be a peaking plant. So they are allowed to generate short-term for a few hours at the hottest time of the day, the coldest time of the day, the time of the day when a nuclear plant goes offline or something else. And they provide peaking power to the New England grid. That is the most valuable electricity. So that plant not only is a valuable plant, a new plant, and a good plant, it also produces the most valuable component of electricity that's sold. Because these turbines are rated for a 10-minute start, and they get paid for being that fast. 0 to 100% less than 10 minutes. And that's because it's a hydro plant. And it was specifically designed by New England Power that way for the entire New England grid that they operate. Back in the old days, back in the 50s when it was built. And you know, the wires went down to Massachusetts and fed Boston and all this kind of stuff. Comerford is the same thing, and it's tied in with Moore. So that you got water from Moore, you got water into Comerford. The Comerford Reservoir gives it a little bit more flexibility than Instant. And then Magnus is designed to flatten it out back to run of the river. That's the 15-mile project, okay? So that type of plant, capable of that type of quick start operation, which if you didn't have a hydro doing it, it would be a gas turbine, a big jet engine located in different sites around New England that does that job. And that's a carbon producing entity. This is not. So you do have a plant. One of the reasons that sale is so high is because you have a plant that is licensed to produce peak power. And it can run, it can cycle, it can run the pond up and down, it can do all those things. It is approved to do that through its license. License goes to 2040 something, all right? Not many plants do that in New England, by the way, not many hydros. And the fact that it can do it with green power now is even more important. The next most important thing in this plant is that, and the reason the sale is so high is because this plant does not operate all the time. It's not a run-of-the-river plant, so it's not operating all the hours of the year. So the price per kilowatt is high because the value of the kilowatt is high. They paid a lot of money for the plant, but it also calculates in against these other plants that you see. It's a much more valuable kilowatt, so it's a much more valuable sale on a price per kilowatt basis. So just think of your raw land, forest land, good land, buy and sell it all the time, valuable land, price per acre. Go down in the valley, corn land where you can grow corn, 5 times the price per acre. That smaller amount of acreage is much more valuable because of the ag potential on it, up and down the valley. Same thing with this particular hydro, okay, on that. Now, the company, when Hydro-Quebec bought it, you know, we have heard them say, because we have appeals with them on the, down in the Deerfield River with Great River, and that, you know, these are portfolio sales, so you can't sell a single, these types of things. And the fact of the matter is, there were 3 bidders, 3 of the top 3 bidders on that project, with the 3 largest hydroelectric operators in the really in the Northeast or North America, because you had Hydro-Quebec was the winner. The other 2 underbidders we likely know who they are, that they were legitimate, worthy underbidders. So they can say that they overpaid, but it's just like any of us bidding at an auction. You had two people behind you that were gonna bid again unless you overbid them. So it's very hard to argue that they overpaid and that you should not consider the amount of that value. Now, if you look at this green line, okay, on this chart, you see that green hashed line? That line is our average market sale that we are using for value. So we used a value that is the average of the previous 11-year average, and that's what creates the green line. So we use 66 cents a kilowatt to value your plant by the sales approach. When they bought it for $1.60 a kilowatt. So we could have argued that twice as much. But we want to see the market mature, continue to mature. We want to see that value. We want to see it in comparison to your other plants. So, and when we go down to Wilder, that kind of runs run of the river, and it's more in line with, for example, that 66, 70 cents. But we track that every year with the sales. We cut the sales, we add them. At some point, that price is either going to be an anomaly out here 5 to 10 years from now, or that's going to get averaged in and start to be bled into the valuation. So, you know, if you got 20 houses in a subdivision, they're all selling between $500,000 and $750,000, you got one that sells for $1.5 million, you're kind of like, ugh, you're not going to make everybody else $1.5 million. But if that's the trend, and you track the trend, and eventually that's what's real, you need to do fair market value, you need to make everybody $1.5 million. So that is your value for this year, is that 66 cents that we used in our report. That's one of 3 methods of value, but that's reconciled into the valuation. In addition to the income we're talking about, I think what Mr. Kibbe said was that we use the income approach. Your report uses 2 primary approaches and looks at the cost. We all know the cost to build that is beyond what might be feasible today. They're so expensive to build. But the income approach and the market sales approach, we watch the income, we watch the sales. All right? As these sales happen, you know the facts of the plant. So as these sales happen, you can back calculate the interest rate, you can back calculate how much the return on equity is and these types of things. So I want to point that out to you, that this, you know, all of these lesser discussions about, you know, how much is the RECs, how much is the PTCs, how much is the cap rate and this kind of stuff, it's embodied in a market sale. And we are, at this point, beneath the highest market sales without even considering Hydro-Quebec's sale. For you, in order to, you know, slide it in for your valuation. This is the same in Littleton, nothing different. And you could certainly make an argue that we put too light on the value. You could make that argument, because we're under the actual sale. Some states, that sale would go on the card. They'd be required to report it, it'd go on the card, in some states. So that's that piece. The backup documentation, this is right out of your report, this is, we gave you, if it does, if we have redacted the report to you on everything that the company wanted is confidential, it's in black. So the stuff that I give you that's not redacted from us is public, because it's our research, and that's the backup documentation in the report for those market sales. All right. Now, the next thing is this redacted CapEx. Okay, so, and I'm just going to take a little poke at Mr. Kibbe. He is a good guy, Because they refused to give us the CapEx when we did the value. We asked them for it, they said, no, not gonna give it to you, not gonna give you a forecast. We have, here's the historical CapEx, use that, but we're not gonna give you a forecast. But he walks in here and says, this is my forecast, you didn't consider my forecast. Boom. This report was issued before Jocelyn issued this. And it's not gonna go back into the reports. So, this has got about, what'd you say, Jocelyn, 2.5 million a year, town numbers, average? Is that what you were thinking of?
I don't have the exact,
Yeah.
this is project by project that we
Yeah,
have.
did you add it all up and average it?
No, I didn't, so,
Okay.
you know, 20.
When you add it all up and average it, you know, because when you have CapEx like this, just flatten it out. It's just like if you had an apartment house, you had the Rabbit Hill Inn, you know, how much money do you need over the years to keep it fixed up? You average it out. So 5-year average of this CapEx here that they're showing is about $2 to $2.5 million bucks. The historic CapEx coming into this year is $540,000, more or less, in our report. That's in our report, our past reports. It's past information. It's public and it's done. About 500 and something thousand bucks. So we use 1.25 million CapEx each year, cumulative. Now, there's categories in the black that's redacted, we won't talk about them, that we actually would argue in your behalf is not CapEx. That it should either be expensed, one-time expense, and amortized, but is not capital expenses necessary to keep the project going. You subtract CapEx just like you would an expense because it technically is incurred every year to keep the project going, just like you maintain a house, you put a new roof on, you paint it, you're putting the money in the till, but you're taking it back out of the till. You have sometimes have capital things that you do that that add to value. And those are not CapEx, they're not expense, they're added to the value of the plant. So I'm not in any way recommending that you consider a reduction because of the CapEx. First of all, you don't know these categories, you're not gonna know these categories, but not all of them are bona fide, legitimate CapEx. They're questionable in the world of CapEx. Secondly, we are already way over the historic CapEx the last 5 to 6 years. If they can prove it next year for value, or the year after that, or whatever, that's fine. But you don't give us this at the BCA or grievance. If you want us to consider it in behalf of the town and you provide it when we ask for it, okay? That's the rules. He doesn't like that, but that's okay, right? So. On the income approach, Jocelyn did tell you that a purchase price allocation was done. Now, that is a confidential document, but it is required in America by the Securities and Exchange Commission. When you buy American assets like this, a company like this, and you buy assets, you have to prepare an allocation of the cost that you assign to each asset. Because what you're going to do is you're going to start a new depreciation schedule if you want to. So they have X number of days after a sale to prepare a purchase price allocation. And their appraisers, that's all they do, purchase price allocations. Because they're not fair market value allocations, they're fair value. Which means, once the price has been paid, they don't care what the price is, whether it's fair market value or not. They have to jam everything into the purchase price. Working capital, everything. And they come up with a price that they allocate to each plant. All right? Now, they did one for here, they did one for this plant, and they did one for the other plants. Okay? Now, that is a confidential document, but as you can see from the blue chart, you don't need a lot of imagination to understand what the purchase price allocation probably is for the Moore Station in comparison to all the other plants, because just look at the blue bar. It's going to be a much, much higher number. that allocation has a capitalization rate in it. And on the income approach, we use a capitalization rate, like all other appraisers in your behalf, which is the total rate earnings on equity plus debt. And it's the total rate of return necessary to provide you back a return on your cash, your own personal cash, and enough money to pay your debt, your interest on your debt. And that's a standard procedure. It's 6.25% or 6.59% was the number that was in the purchase price allocation. The actual number that we used in your behalf was 7.9%, all in, all done. Now, purchase price allocations, if they take the property taxes out and expense them, they have a higher revenue because they have a higher, they expense it out, they have a lower revenue, but they have a lower cap rate. So that part of it you don't know. But the total rate of 7.9 includes your taxes, property taxes. That's how we figured, that's how we add the taxes in, because you're gonna pay it on the value. The base rate on that was about 6.2 as the cap rate without the property taxes. Now, that is not a fair comparison to the 6.25 because we don't know where the taxes are. And the people that do that don't care about the property taxes, they just assume it's an expense somewhere. Because they're looking at just the EBITDA, earnings before interest and tax, and interest and depreciation. It's very close to their own numbers. Now, one of the problems we have is that the interest rates, the debt rates, during the time that we're doing this appraisal are low. We all know that. We all know the debt rates have been low. And the capital debt rates were down at 4.4%. We didn't use 4.4%. We used BBB bonds, just above investment grade, just above junk, at 5.66%. So we increased the cap rate on that debt side from to about 1.26 additional interest rate points. Now that's big. On a percent basis, that's 20 to 30% higher. So that built in a lot of headroom in your cap rate. And we also went to the market of their peers and extracted the actual equity returns for companies that are their peer companies in operations. Now they're owned by a Crown corporation. They're owned by the Queen. Quebec owns them, the Queen owns Quebec. So as a Crown Corp, they don't pay taxes. But the companies that operates in the States, you've made it a tax-exempt company? A non-taxable?
No, we're a pass-through company.
A what?
We're a pass-through.
Pass-through company.
We're fully taxable. But
Okay, so-
all of our tax burden passes through up to a stream.
Yeah. And does
Upstream.
it go up to Hydro-Quebec?
It goes to a blocking entity, Hydro HQ Holdings US,
Yeah.
which is all their assets in the US all gets rolled up to that. That's the tax paying.
Okay, keep your hand right there. Put it up there. That's the top. Does that guy pay US taxes?
Yes.
And they pay to us, the United States?
Yes.
It does?
Yeah.
Okay, so.
And that's why that's
So
the
they do pay taxes?
But then that's why that's the entity
Yeah.
that can monetize
The
the
PTC?
PTC.
But this entity owns all these other ones.
But they don't.
That's a
That's
walnut shell.
That's their money. That's no.
No, that's a walnut shell.
You're
The
unfamiliar with.
PTC.
Then you're unfamiliar with how corporate.
Oh, I'm
corporations
familiar
work.
with walnut shells.
Money flows upstream.
Yes, it does.
And so
Yeah.
that money doesn't come back down the water.
You're not familiar with a judge asking you the same question. Which walnut shell you hiding?
No, that's not true at all. I'm not the taxpaying entity.
Look, the PTC starts out with the plant. With no plant, no PTC. And if you wiggle it all the way up to here, and we're down here, don't tell me I can't have it when it came through me.
That's not how it works. It's a waterfall, and it flows. All that cash flows
No,
upstream.
no, water
credits that are generated, but those are not tax credits that we take advantage of. Who's the tax entity in this case? For property taxes, it's Great River Hydro LLC. It's not Hydro-Quebec.
And they used to
Holdings
pay
do-
taxes.
Huh?
They used to pay taxes.
Not since we've been Great River Hydro,
Huh?
Yeah.
Not since you owned it.
not since Great River Hydro. When you mentioned earlier that that they bought us and rearranged, nothing has changed. We're still Great River Hydro LLC.
Except you made a pass-through entity out of it.
No, we haven't. We were a pass-through entity before.
Yeah.
Under ArcLight ownership, we were still a pass-through entity.
No one ever at Great River Hydro ever told me a tax credit, a PTC, wasn't real money that came from the port.
I'm not sure this aside is helping us
Well,
any.
but I mean, he mentioned red herring, and he's
Yeah.
right. This is a red herring because the tax-paying we are not the income tax-paying entity.
Okay, we'll get to your response to Skip and
Great. Sorry,
Nick.
he did ask me the question.
Yeah, he did.
I
do you?
wanted to make a point that your job is to value the property, and when you're dealing with properties of this magnitude, you have to be careful of the pass-through companies and these types of things. You still want to get down to what is the property producing, all right? What were the other ones? The interest rate and the debt, the equity rate, what? The generation. The generation used, the PTC generation of 18,000 that you're saying is overstated. This has all come from the company. You gave us the generation, and you claimed the additional 36,000, and that for Rex and everything else in your data response to the towns, the two towns. You claimed the 36,000. You also produced the record document that you calculated a PTC for 18,000 of the 36,000. Okay, now that's all background noise for the fact that the model you used was 1989. Where's the model? Where's that thing she gave you? No, the thing from the right here. All right. Okay, so the water years used to calculate those energy things is a FERC formula. And the water years are 1989, 1992, 1994, 2007, and the current year, 1990. Okay, not even the current year. So the 292,000 megawatt hours, 292 million kilowatts, is based on water years as far back as almost 30 years, generally 30 years old. Now, what we do know in the upper basins of New Hampshire and Vermont is that the entire watershed is producing more water annually. We have more rain, less sun, more water. If you don't believe that, look at the rivers, look at the brooks, look at the roads that are washed out. We all know that. Now, the last 115 to 120 years of records indicate a rain shield and a water increase of approximately 50% from the Berkshires right up through the Canadian border on the Green Mountain side and on the White Mountain side. So we use the last 21 years of water, and we ratchet it forward each year. The last 21 years, inclusive, as an average, is what comes up to an energy generation, not the 292, but 320,000 megawatt hours. And that's based on the current 21-year current water use, not the water formula to calculate the PTC and the percentage of the percent of the PTC. That percent of 6.1%, the 6.6% is a percent related to number of bygone years, a select handful of bygone water years that don't even exist anymore. You're looking forward. Appraisers, look forward. You wanna look backwards, it's only historical. So I think that that's important. We've got 320,000 in our report, including the new generator. We got 36,000 for the new generator, 18,000 of that in megawatts or 18 million kilowatts is subject to a production tax credit additional payment. All 36,000 is subject to a renewable energy credit. And those revenue streams are in your report. Now, we got this one exhibit today, this is the last thing I'll say, is that this one. If you go to the first page, the orange ones, house was spiking. From 2008 to 2023, we all know that housing prices have spiked, okay? But if you want to compare the prices for hydroelectric plants, you have 21 years on this blue chart in your report you can compare to residential housing. So your residential housing neighborhood zones in your reval will go up more than your hydroelectric plant goes up. And you can see that the hydroelectric plant sales have started up to about 2006 and have kind of, they're not level, they're continuing to go up on an average basis, but at a much lower rate. So this is obvious, this is obvious. You don't dwell on market sales of hydros for your reval, but this is certainly more. But there should be no implication that because the houses have gone up more, that we made a value go up more. It's actually prepared in a completely separate market sale analysis. Now on the chart about the price of electricity, it's very hard to reconcile this to the actual electricity price because this is the total billions of dollars on this side of the bar graph. Billions of dollars total paid in New England by all New England ratepayers. This includes industrial, everything. It includes the construction of new data centers taking a ton of power. So there's no correlation. You can't find a price per kilowatt here. And these numbers of 1224 is not the wholesale price of electricity. Like he says, it's $12.24 billion of wholesale electricity. There's cheap wholesale electricity at night. There's very expensive wholesale electricity at 2 o'clock in the afternoon at 100 degrees that this plant addresses. They sell into that. So this is a very meaningless presentation for you for value because it doesn't relate to the price of electricity they get, the type of power they produce, and when they produce it. So please be careful of this document. Okay? So that's just that was the two of them. I think that's it. You guys want anything else? No, no?
You said it all.
Okay, well, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Skip. I guess my next category here is invite questions from us to, I guess, to both of you. I've got a couple. One of them probably I should have read something that I haven't. But Skip was describing what goes on at that plant, which morphs into its value. I've understood years ago, but that plant also, if there's excess electricity in the system, you can have one of those wheels turning to burn off electricity. Is that something that still happens? That used to?
That's not what happens.
It's not anymore.
No. So if I can explain it a little bit more in terms of how the generation works there. So we originally had 4 very large units in that facility.
Yep.
And then we built this 5th, much smaller unit. And there's those 4 units that have a very high capacity, 192 megawatts for those 4 units, plus the 4.7 megawatts that we just added to the small unit. We store water obviously in the reservoir. You're all familiar with how we draw the reservoir down in the wintertime, and then we fill it up with the snow melt. So there's certain times of year when there's more water than we need. And then there's other times of year when there's not enough water. And so all generation is not created equal for us. And then you think about seasonal differences in terms of pricing. The highest price periods are during the really hot periods in the summertime and the really cold periods in the middle of the winter. When do we have the most water available to us?
Right now.
Yeah, right.
Well, this is an anomaly, to use one of Skip's words. The last 2 years have been kind of crazy wet, right? And we've been feeling it. I mean, go look at the roads blown out on our own property, and we feel your pain. So, but most of the water we receive and most of the generation we make is in the spring, during snow melt. When there's a lot of rain, a lot of snow melt. That's when most of our generation over the course of the year. If you look at our generation profile on a megawatt hour basis, we have most of that peaks in the spring. And then less of it in the summertime because we have less water, and then kind of flattens out in the fall, and then winter depends on the winter basically. So when you think of our generation profile, not every megawatt hour is worth the same. So when we have more water than we know what to do with, our principal job is to move water downstream. And so during the spring, we generate a lot of megawatt hours because there's so much water coming in, we have to move it downstream. So we just generate it. We're not peaking like Skip is saying. And all that generation is happening when power prices are in the absolute bottom of the seasonal period. So yeah, we're generating a lot of megawatts, but the amount of money we're making on those megawatts is basically nothing because we just have to move that water. Then there's other times of years when we can't peak, because there's a certain amount of water we always have to pass, because you have to keep a certain amount of water in the river at all times. And if it's dry, that means we just have to run that water no matter what. And so again, we're not peaking for that generation. That generation is just happening, and it's happening around the clock. So when you look at how much we actually are able to incrementally gain in terms of our peaking, our ability to peak on when you think about pricing, there's a term called around the clock pricing. The average price for around the clock, we get about a 10+% increase on that from our peaking operations. It's not this massive increase. It's he points to that big blue line on there. He's the one that used the word anomaly to describe that, and you can see how it is an anomaly on this picture. The value of this plant yes, it's a peaking plant, but we are able to achieve like roughly a 10% uplift over the around-the-clock price. That's it, because we have all this water that we have to run in the springtime or during any high water event. Even now, we have to push a whole lot of water because there's a lot of water in the river, and we just have to run it. And so we're not able to just turn it on for those 2 hours when it's most valuable, like he described. That's not how it is at all. So yes, we are able to do that periodically over the course of the year, but what that means to us from a total value perspective is not as large of an increase as he's describing. And then from an incremental standpoint, going back to that new unit, those 4 units that we originally had, we had to provide that minimum flow that like I said, we have to always provide water downstream. We were putting that water through a 40 megawatt unit and getting about 19% efficiency out of it. So we were pushing this gigantic unit with 320 cubic feet of water per second, where it's hydraulically efficient at thousands of cubic feet per second. And so we're trying to shove this unit with a very small volume of water and generating electricity, yes, but very little, because it's very inefficient. We put a new unit in. That unit works efficient, and we're able to generate more electricity as a result, incrementally more electricity. We pass the same volume of water through that dam. So regardless of what Skip was saying in terms of, hydrology has changed an awful lot, I don't know what the difference is. I mean, we were mandated by FERC to pick the water years that we did in that study. I don't know how that compares to current water years, but the changes are incremental and small on total volume. So total volume still the same going through the plant. We're just able to generate slightly more electricity as a result of that efficiency gain that we get with that new unit. So even though that new unit can, yes, generate, if it was just spinning all by itself, 36,000 megawatt hours a year, the incremental difference at the plant, because it's one of 5 units that passes roughly the same volume of water, is only 18,000 cubic feet per second.
Under H here, it doesn't say which party we can question, so I guess we can question Skip and Austin too. Open for questions for a minute here from anybody of anybody. Minor question, did you have to spill any during all this?
Yes, we did.
Forget McAdoo's, I saw McAdoo's.
Yeah, McAdoo.
But see, McAdoo's suffers from the Passumpsic River, and that's where a lot of it, that's below
So,
Comerford.
just to give you an example, so there's no major tributary in the Comerford Reservoir, right? Everything's just a little trickle
Right.
that goes into the Comerford
Brooks here,
Reservoir.
Brooks there.
The top of the reservoir is more dam, right? The bottom of the reservoir below that is Passumpsic. There's no real major tributary into the Comerford Reservoir. We basically shut off more during the event. We had to keep the 320 CFS going through, but that's it. We had very small volume coming through. And we shut off Comerford because we were trying our best to protect downstream. We estimated about 14,000 cubic feet per second going into Comerford, just in the little brooks.
I
And
believe it.
Yeah,
it was insane. I mean, we've never seen anything like that.
now Ron and I live on the back road there, it almost went out from the brook that goes right in at the bridge here,
Yeah.
and it was a horror show.
Well,
Well,
we,
Suki lives up there
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
oh, is that right?
Yeah.
We have a road, we're off topic, but it's an interesting story, that connects the Comerford station out the back down sort of along the river. It's a company road, and we in National Grid use it. Some anglers use it to fish in the tail race below Comerford. But it goes out to, ultimately gets to a 230 kV substation out there. That little brook is called Smith Brook, comes under 135, it's on the Monroe side. It blew out a new valley down and took out, we had a 10-foot culvert that passed the water in that brook that usually you'd step across. It took a 10-foot culvert out and about 1,000 feet of road. It's gone. It's probably close to $2 million worth of damage, just in that one spot. And that was one out of many spots we had the damage on. It's crazy. We're gonna be paying for that for a very long time, as you guys know very well, so.
Yeah. So
I don't have any.
none of you got any questions?
You wouldn't have any
Um,
questions.
The last aside, next time the water's down, repaint the shark. The eye's getting dim on the shark.
Okay.
We all get a kick out of that when we go across Ken Kern's Causeway.
I'll let the guys know.
Is that what that was?
Okay, the next item is ask the listers to present their evaluation and supporting evidence, and I'm interested in the numbers. What was this evaluated as before they started their updated project? What was the evaluation during that special agreement for those couple years when this was in the works? And what are we asking now that they're agreeing and Skip is supporting? Anybody can answer.
I might also just simply add that the new unit itself, the facility, that unit itself is actually technically located in Littleton. So all of the generating equipment in the dam is all located on
Yeah,
the Littleton
this is
site.
all about value.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, except for McIndoe's, we get the short end of the stick on
Yeah,
McIndoe's, the guts are in Vermont.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We get the short end anyway, it all goes to the state now. We used to keep it.
You get
So-
you get some figures?
Yeah, I don't know if I have all the numbers you're looking for right in front of me, but, as was stated earlier, with the low flow that came on, the listers, in conjunction with Great River Hydro, in order to match up with Littleton's appraisal schedule, which was this year, we entered into 2 one-year agreements with Great River Hydro. With their previous owner, one, I'm going from memory, so you may have to correct me here, I think we got 50% of the projected improvement cost the first year, and then the full amount the second year. So that second year was $32,526,000, and I believe that's what the agreement says. That was for what their assessment was for the new low flow, increased value to the dam.
And what are we asking from, what was your current assessment that they are agreeing?
So the first one we got before grievance was 33,849,500. And after the grievance, when we got the $2 million increase, it was $35,810,800.
Say that again, Jocelyn?
$35,810,800.
Okay.
Now, keep in mind that those numbers reflect our common level of appraisal. That is not the appraised value
That's right.
that's in Skip's report. That number is his number reduced by 84.37, I believe, is our CLA. So it's approximately 15% discount over their appraised value.
And before they started this low flow project, what was, or maybe that's not relevant, but.
That's the number I gave you, the 32,526 was last year
Right,
after the agreement.
okay.
That's where we
I
started.
guess further back is irrelevant at this point.
Yeah, further back wouldn't reflect the
Yeah,
improvements. Right.
gotcha. Well, the next category is, ask the appellant to respond to the information presented by the listers, so I guess this is your real chance, other than this, to respond to anything you'd like to that Skip has offered us.
Well, we did give, there was a lot of information there, and I guess, I don't wanna overstate it though. You know, the one thing I did wanna make sure I corrected, and from what Skip was saying, you know, it had to do with the taxable, you know, he characterized us as a non-taxable entity. Obviously, we're an LLC. We are, Great River Hydro LLC is the property tax owner, is the property owner in town. We're the ones that gets the property tax assessed to us. If you go to the registry of deeds, you look at our deed, it's TransCanada Hydro Northeast. And you might remember back when all of this was owned by TransCanada Hydro, when Great River Hydro acquired it, they acquired the entire company, TransCanada Hydro Northeast, and changed the name. That's why there's not a new deed associated with this, and why another deed wasn't recorded when the last owner sold to the new owner. It's at the parent level, it's way above us, and did not affect anything. The logos didn't change, the phone numbers didn't change, the personnel didn't change, and our corporate structure at the property ownership level did not change. So, but our upstream owner, as it was under ArcLight, is a taxable entity for income tax purposes. And so any sort of income tax credit that they're able to take advantage of. It's like any other company, if there was some sort of tax credit that the owner was able to take advantage of, that's good for them. They can take advantage of that. But that doesn't mean that the quote sponsor company down below gets the benefit of that. That's their benefit to have. And so, just sort of not considering what Skip was saying is that the income tax versus the property tax are different things. And that income that they're able to take from monetizing tax credits is not something that is valued to us. So, so that's just patently untrue. And I do agree, I agree with him. We could sell, you know, when he talked about, you know, the portfolio value being overstated. I agree with him. You know, if Hydro-Quebec decided they wanted to peel off these 3 stations and sell them individually, sure, that would be their prerogative. Would they sell just more? Absolutely not. I agree 100% with Skip when he's saying that, because they're all these 3 are licensed as a single unit. But the portfolio benefit to Great River Hydro is because we flow up and down this river with 5 different licensed projects and on the Deerfield River. So we have multiple licensed projects, 13 different generating stations, not just these 3. 46 different units that are part of that. There's a tremendous amount, as we were talking about earlier. We have a drought on one river. We have a lot of water on another river. There's a lot of built-in hedging, for lack of a better term, that the corporate portfolio was able to take advantage of. But that's a corporate portfolio. It's not something that benefits the single unit or this group of units that are here. And so you do have to take that into account when you're thinking about things like discount rate, because if this was sold off as a unit of just the 15-mile falls, then yes, there would be all that benefit that accrues to the portfolio would no longer accrue to this set of units. And so that I guess I'd leave it at that. I think it's you'll notice we didn't argue how Skip presented the sale data, because we generally agree with it. It's an anomaly. And the value, the price that he used in there, we're not disagreeing with that at all. You know, so the sale price is sort of, it almost, in this conversation, doesn't really matter a whole heck of a lot, and that's why he didn't put a whole lot of value on the sale price. He used sort of the standard, and which we agree is the right way to do it, is you look at kind of what the other sales have happened. So, you know, all the conversation about the sale, I don't think really matters in the context of this conversation.
Jocelyn, anything like you'd like to add? No. Okay, so we're back to.
Dave, I just wanted to say one thing
sure.
for the record, because I gave you the discounted with the CLA.
Mhm.
Just for the record, the total value of this parcel, as reported by Sanssouci Associates, is $46 million.
Is that the first number or the second number? What you gave me before,
The number that Jocelyn gave you was after we multiplied the CLA.
okay, so
This is the total value
you're changing
as
it.
proposed.
You're updating the 35.8.
Correct.
To, okay, what's that new number?
46, 639, 538. That's Waterford's piece of Moordam.
Okay, and
So if our CLA
the
was.
reason they differ is because of the CLA?
If our CLA was at 100%, their tax bill would show that as the value.
Questions for anybody after what Brandon has said?
Yeah, I have a
Ron,
question.
go ahead.
From looking at your report, I've heard what, and maybe you're getting to that, but what does Great River Hydro say the value of it? Is it the 28,400,000 on page 2 of your report?
Yes.
That's what you'd like it to be?
Yes.
28 what now?
400,000.
Well, that's good, more zeros, we like zeros.
And like we mentioned, I mean, as we started this meeting, our interest in the appeal is to preserve our rights under this. Our ideal is we land on a value that we can all agree on, and we sign it up for another agreement for a duration of time like we've done in the past. That way, you don't have to go through this process a bunch of times over the next, 5 years. We don't have to do it. And you have certainty in terms of what our value is, we have certainty what our value is, and that helps us and helps you. So
Yeah,
we-
historically, I think the select board and people like yourself have worked out a common agreement and it never wound up.
Right,
With
that's,
with
and
a crowd, with
that
a
would
crowd
be
in
our
the room.
preference, that's our preference, that's what we would rather do, we don't wanna get in a long slog, legal battle or anything like that, it's not, I don't think that benefits us, I don't think it benefits you, we all just spend a lot of money and nobody
Okay.
gets anything out of it.
Anything else, Ron, or Raj, or Suki?
Well, I guess I don't understand, well, there's a lot of this I admit I don't understand. But the value that Great River Hydro says that Waterford's portion of the dam is, you're saying with the addition of the 5th unit, it's actually less than it was prior to the addition of the 5th unit?
Yeah, because the unit is in Littleton, so the value teeters a little bit. That was a large investment that we made in the Littleton portion of the facility. So more of the value is going to Littleton.
Anything?
We spent $23 million on
Yeah.
that project, so $23 million of investment in Littleton. So in the grand scheme of things, we're putting more into Littleton. That takes away from what is in Waterford as a whole.
But isn't Waterford's portion of the dam, isn't it calculated based on a percentage of the entire property?
Right, so if you
That
increase,
still doesn't-
if you increase the total value on one side, it has to still add up to 100%. So, you see what I mean?
Yeah, I guess. I still
If
don't
you
buy it.
increase the amount of the dam's value in total, a percentage of that goes to Waterford.
Yeah,
Anything else, group?
no.
Well, no, I'm gonna need help on this one. Normally this would be when I would say, go have a good evening. But we've got this,
Okay.
normally we would do, we'd do our appointment of an inspection committee internally. Mike was whispering to me, I think both Mike and Deb have done some research on this. That we can't bypass the inspection committee. So,
That appears to be the advice that we received from Vermont League of Cities and Towns.
Yeah, that sounds reasonable to me.
Even though
Everybody's
all of the members here agree that it would be nice to go through the dam, it may not be all that pertinent to the discussion here, but apparently legally we can't get around that.
Right.
this is all about numbers.
And we have already given, the consultant a tour, they've already had a tour, so I don't know that
And the
necess-
listers.
And the listers, so I don't know that necessary, I don't know if that,
But that's not us.
but it's not you, right, so
Well,
what we've seen other, communities do is they say, well, we at least have to go put our eyes on it, and rather than making it a big deal, pick a Saturday morning and go and say, okay, we looked at it. So that's up to you, how you wanna handle it.
yeah, well, we don't wanna be breaking any rules here.
Right.
So we could, the thing is, this vastly alters the time frame. If we sit here tonight, and don't do an inspection, we could have it done in 15 days, is it? But if the inspection committee itself is allowed 30 days, and then, once they make their report, there's another 15 days, so it could max out. I think one thing that I could be corrected on, but it doesn't look like Skip is gonna, you get to come back, if we do an inspection committee, and then have an evening where we have the report, you get to respond. I don't think we need Skip again, or, go ahead, Skip.
No, you're closing the record tonight on testimony from us. From us, you're closing the record. We
As far as
can't-
testimony, yeah.
Yeah, we can't respond. Now, we can answer questions, but you get no more presentation from us. You're closing you're closing the hearing portion. But we can come back if you want us, and you can ask us questions from your inspection, and we can answer those questions.
Well, it doesn't, yeah, actually, that's R on this list. Invite final comments from the appellant,
Yeah,
invite final comments from the listers, which could be you.
yeah, that's what we're saying, is that we don't come back and give you more stuff, more
Right.
testimony and another presentation. You know, he said, she said, or any of that stuff. You may have questions for the purposes of your ultimate deliberation based on your site tour that you would like clarified, and you're free to ask any of us those questions. But we cannot volunteer information to you unless requested after tonight. You're closing this hearing tonight, so if the public was here, if you don't want to hear it, or the clerk has to close the hearing. You know, okay?
Well, I guess, in that case, we've gotta do an inspection committee, which means you can all go have supper.
So as far as the inspection, we will have to, if
Yeah, we
you
gotta-
come up with a date, we can talk with the plant manager, but we can't just walk into there, so we will just need to
Yeah.
find a time that works.
But
Yeah,
does that, I mean, the inspection for Waterford doesn't necessarily have to involve inside the plant, right? Because,
But what would we look,
because all of our property's not, if that's in Waterford, it's not in the plant.
We could
yeah,
look for
well,
from the
the plant's
riverbank.
not in Waterford at all.
Right,
Well, almost 2 decades ago, this issue came up. I don't know if it was you or Skip I was telling. And 3 of us went over there and paraded around the cement part out onto the fill like tourists, and came back and probably didn't make a hoot of difference.
yeah, yeah.
But if we were gonna do this inspection that we appear to be required to do, where would we go? Anybody, Skip or Brandon, or
So,
what would we look at
Well,
to
Mr.
to
Keach-
fulfill our obligation?
Mr. Keach said it clearly. You're valuing the whole, so you go through the whole plant. You look at the turbines, you look at the new min-flow turbine, because it all becomes a value of the plant. You own a percentage of the value of the plant. So, you know, you go and you look at the whole thing and educate yourself on it, and then you come back and deliberate, because you're deliberating about the whole value, and then the percentage is in your report, nobody's contested the percent, whatever it is. But he's dead right, and, you know, it raises, if the value's increased, which it has, you know, one of the reasons is the turbine, but it's not the precise reason, because it's income and sales also, additional cost. So you look at the whole thing, so you know, you go down to the visitor center, and that's where you meet, and go right through the plant, you know, your end of it's right outside the building, and around to your side, but, you know, enjoy the tour, look at everything,
Yeah.
look at the new turbine,
Been a while since I've been in there.
yeah.
we're happy to host you,
Value the whole
we're happy
thing.
to host you in whatever sort of form of tour that you'd like. We just need a little bit of advance notice so that we can coordinate with our area manager to make sure, because we have a lot of work that's going on in the
Yeah,
area.
during mud season, myself and wife and a lot of the neighbors use your access road to the powerhouse as, you know, can't walk in these muddy roads.
Yeah.
We had 9 mud seasons this year.
Yeah.
So we just walk up to that last gate that's probably controlled with like a garage door.
Mhm.
National Grid and other people are going in and out all the
You're
time.
talking one by the cemetery
But-
there?
No,
No, this is the,
closer
pa-
to
the
the
On the New
last
Hampshire
gate on
side.
the access road.
Oh, down by the access to the plant itself. Okay,
yeah, to the powerhouse.
Yeah, yep.
Yeah. So, do we need you to do the to select the committee, or you just wanna decide? Deb has access to you by email or phone
Absolutely.
to set up a date. I mean, we got 30 days to do this,
Yep.
or to do it and do the report.
Yep.
Yeah, I guess we can figure that out ourselves. Thank you all.
Do you want Jocelyn to send me some dates and then I can confirm
Yeah,
with
we're happy to
you
do
folks?
that. Are there days of the week that, or times of day that work better for you all?
Well,
What's the?
Most of us, I think, are retired, except Deb's not going on
I'm not going
she's
on
not going on the tour. We're retired, so we can probably work it out fairly
Okay.
easy. Yeah,
I'll be
We'll
does
send-
that,
we'll
that
send you
work
some
for
dates.
everybody?
Yep.
Makes sense, Skip? I'm relying on you.
Yeah, it all makes sense.
I gotta give
Yeah.
Marilyn a good report on you, you
That's
know.
what you gotta do. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, nice,
Thank you,
nice to meet
Jocelyn.
you all.
Brandon,
And,
See you.
yeah.
Safe travels.
Thank you.
Austin, make sure they notify you because you need to go
This is
representing.
not recording.
Yes.
So you're going,
I
so
probably.
you and Mike gonna go,
Here to go, Mike? Yeah, probably, okay.
yeah,
Good.
and then,
Whole gang.
thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for helping me muddle through it.
Where do these chairs go? Oh, take care. In that corner. In that corner.
You know Dean Blanchett, Skip? Do you know Dean Blanchett?
Oh, that name rings a bell.
He was in service station maintenance. His brother Doug used to drive school bus.
Yeah.
That's the only person in
Thank you all.
Lancaster I know.
Have a good night.
You live right in
Thanks.
town, or you live?
No, I live out on Reed Road. Out that, Reed Road, you go out by town.
Pleasure to meet all of
Off there too. Yeah.
Letting us do this project.
I know where Sanders Village is. Sanders Village. I know where that
Yeah, you
is.
know what that is. 2 houses.
It's a pleasure meeting you. I'm
Right
sure
on.
I'll see you again.